Welcome to Extracurricular. I am your co-host, Eddie Geller.
And I am your other co-host, Stephanie Vanos, school board member for Orange County Public Schools, but here I am, as I am every day, unofficially.
If I edited out the portion where you say you're here unofficially, would you be here officially? Would that change the rules, do you think?
No, I think intent counts first.
Okay. I mean, you're the lawyer. I trust you. Thanks for doing the show. It's always a delight. We took a week off last week for the holidays, and I missed you. I missed being on the pod with you.
I know it was. I missed it too. But we snuck an interview in midweek, which was kind of fun.
We did. I want to talk about that interview in a second. First of all, you know my spiel if you're a regular listener, but if you are new, please do subscribe to the podcast. Rate us. Steph, how many stars can they rate us?
5 stars only.
5 stars only. Please, we're asking you. You can also follow us on extracurricular_pod on Instagram or email us at podcastextracurricular@gmail.com. Okay, that's a lot, but we appreciate your attention. We are in an attention economy, and we make this podcast. We hope people are listening to it. Is that so much to ask, Stephanie?
Well, in an attention economy, I would say the answer is actually yes. It is a lot to ask, Eddie. But we're doing our best.
Okay, if you weren't doing this podcast right now, where would you be putting your attention?
I don't even know. There's so many things.
Can we talk about the fact that you're moving soon?
We can talk about the fact that I'm moving soon. And also, I spent 2 days of my break going through all of my emails, which if you're a listener on the podcast, you know. It's not my favorite thing, but I do it. And I got them organized and I got them filed. So don't email me because it's done. Just kidding. Email me. Email me your problems, your questions. It's my job.
I'm sure the listeners are going to feel very welcome to email you after that. I think you might have broken the recording device with your outburst, but I appreciate it. You should be as outspoken as you want to. Okay. Speaking of favorite things like your email, this is my favorite interview we've ever done. My favorite guest. Do you think that's unfair to say?
Well, I think you may have a little bit of bias, but I get it. Dads are pretty fantastic, and your dad is a very fantastic dad.
My dad is wonderful, and he appeared on the podcast this week because we were visiting for Thanksgiving, and it seemed like a perfect opportunity. And my dad, in great shape, a spry 81 years old. I hope it's okay that I'm putting your age out there, Dad. But I thought it was relevant because, I thought about what is the point of view of someone who has witnessed everything we've been through. He wasn't really necessarily aware of everything right after post World War II, but essentially, around for what it was like during the McCarthy era and the Kennedy, Nixon, et cetera, a perspective on what is happening today. So I thought that would be really interesting. And spoiler alert, it was interesting. He talked about what that world is like, and he talked about his experience as an educator.
Yeah, I loved that he had that experience. And sometimes I don't think we place enough value on that. I mean, I've talked about it before, just making sure that, as people age out of, whether it's a political position or something else, that we are trying to gather as much experience and knowledge from them as we can. And sometimes I just don't think in our society we're so good at that. But I think it's important. And I learned so much listening to him, and it was so interesting, and he loved talking about it. So It made for a really great interview.
Best interview we've ever done, for sure. No biases. Please check out our interview with my dad, Richard Geller. But we also had a wonderful Thanksgiving. Thank you so much for joining. It was great to have you. What was your favorite Thanksgiving side dish?
There were many, many good things.
Mm-hmm.
I may be a little biased.
Okay.
I did bring my favorite sweet potatoes and apples, the thing that I must have on the table every Thanksgiving. But you made a cornbread souffle that I also thought was really, really good.
Oh, thank you very much. And I thought your sweet potatoes and apples were delicious. And to my sister's question, these are cooked sweet potatoes and apples. You did not just throw some sweet potatoes and apples into a bowl and just hand them off to everyone.
True, they were cooked in true Midwestern casserole style. Those babies were cooked. They had a little sauce in them, and they were in a Corningware dish. So absolutely,
they were delicious. Thank you so much for bringing it. If you have a favorite side dish, I'm sure you do. Please let us know. Shoot us a DM on Instagram or email us at podcastextracurricular@gmail.com. Had a wonderful Thanksgiving. We hope you had a wonderful Thanksgiving as well. And then we also had another part of our Thanksgiving break, which was, a bit somber, but also really meaningful. Steph, do you want to talk about that for a sec?
Yeah, some of our great family friends growing up, there were twins, Amy and Niti, I'm calling you out, friends of my sister. My sister is close in age to me, and I'll say she's a year and a half younger. I usually make people answer me, who do you think looks older? But great friends of our family, and they lost their dad after a battle with ALS. And so we sort of flew out last minute to Dallas to really, truly to celebrate his life and to honor everything that he'd done. And just hearing the stories, he came over from India and he sponsored, over the years that he was here, he sponsored really everyone in his family. And,
incredible.
And their mother's family as well. And so many cousins from different parts of the United States came just to honor him. And it was just really beautiful. And there was a tribute, kind of just a description of his life. And what I found, there were so many parts. He was a very charming person. But what I found to be so interesting is he had worked a number of jobs. And then when he was 66, he decided to start his own company. And it was a manufacturing company that just really took off. And I just love that at 66, that's when he did it. And it's never
incredible.
Too late, right? It's never too late to add to your story, to change your story, to do something new, to break out of your regular day-to-day stuff. And I really admire that about him.
Yeah, it was really incredible. Do you think it's too late for me as a man of 41, going to be 42 next month, or excuse me, almost next month? I'll be 42 in January. My brain is already in December. Do you think it's too late for me to become an NHL hockey player?
It's never too late. That's what I've learned. It's never too late. And just that, and also just on one more serious note, just his generosity just spoke volumes. I mean, he had so many people who were actually working in the manufacturing plant, that showed up for this service. And they had 3 speakers. One spoke in Spanish, one spoke in Punjabi.
I believe so.
And then and then his daughter spoke in English. But it was really, really neat to just have the different languages and just so many different people there from so many different aspects of his life. And I don't know, these times are sad, but they also really make you think about what makes a meaningful life. And so I was honestly honored to be there.
It was incredibly moving. And I think anytime you see people, reflect on someone who meant so much to them so earnestly, it fills your heart, because you never want to lose someone in your life, lose, a parent, certainly, but a time to reflect on what they meant to everyone. And from what I took from the 6 services, not a religion culture that I'm very familiar with, but they did talk about death being part of the life cycle. And, it is certainly a painful part of it, but it is also part of life in the fact that you made your life meaningful and you contributed to your family and your community, is incredibly valuable. So I thought that part was really beautiful. And if I knew you were going to talk for another 2 minutes very earnestly, I wouldn't have made the joke in the middle of that. And I'm sorry to you and to the listeners. So
jokes are good. We like jokes.
You gotta keep it a little light, in these dark times.
For sure.
Okay. Let's talk for just a moment about something that we're switching gears here. Let's talk about school board things. We actually posted a video right before or right after I think we recorded our last podcast about school start times and the start time survey. Do you want to just talk for just a few seconds about what that was about and all that jazz?
Yeah, sure. So we had a survey, and this is required by the Florida legislature to sort of assess whether the community is interested in moving school start times to where high school students would start school at, I believe, 8:30 or after. And it would essentially, for our county, it would mean that elementary would start earlier in the 7:45, 7:50 range, and high school would start at 8:30, and middle school would basically remain the same. So there was a survey that went out, and I got a lot of questions about just some specifics about the middle school times, why they were extended, and also why we can't all just start school at a normal time. Like, why can't everyone just start between 8 and 8:30? So it really gave me an opportunity to just share why that is. And it really has to do with buses, and it has to do with, of course, transportation funding from the state of Florida. And essentially that Orange County Public School is reimbursed, I believe it's about 38 cents for every dollar that it is required to spend from the state rules on transportation. And that's really why, because the buses have to be used, every bus for elementary and then middle and high school, that's why they have to be so staggered. So it kind of gave an opportunity to share that. And then also just to share some of the research that has come out about, why high schoolers starting school later is really better for them in essentially every way.
Well, I think we've been very equivocating on this podcast about the benefits of later school start times for high school students. Though I will say, probably one of your most unpopular positions. Of course, I always watch your social media closely and the videos you do. I think that got like some of the least interaction, which I think is like a lot of your, like, of course, there's people who are maybe like less affected, but my personal opinion is there's like probably people who support you and adore you as their school board member who are not on the same page with you about this issue and are like, nah, I'm just gonna like not interact with this post. But I thought that was kind of funny. But I appreciate you speaking out on it. I think it's gonna have a tough time making it through. I do hear, when I look at comments and obviously you are so much more plugged in, but it takes a lot for people to want to make such a big change. I think it could be such a meaningful, powerful, beneficial change for these students. But I get that it's hard, so I think not a lot of people are necessarily on that same page.
Well, we'll see. We'll see what the survey says.
Survey says, please don't change our start times.
Well, we don't know that.
We don't know that. I would be happy to eat some humble pie if those. I took the survey as a member of the community. I would be very happy if the survey came back and it said, yes, we want later school start times for our high school students. I'm very dubious that that's what it's going to say, but you know what? I've been wrong before. It's happened once or twice.
I think the most important thing is we're listening to the community.
Yeah.
And if the community says, no, we hear we see the benefits, but it's not for us, then that's going to be a huge part of the conversation. So I am appreciative that a survey went out and that people had an opportunity to provide their feedback.
For sure. And no matter what, you are in favor of just railroading decisions despite what people tell you.
Absolutely, 100%. No.
Okay, another thing I do want to talk about from your social media is you posted this piece, this Florida politics opinion piece from the head of the State Board of Education, who essentially was advocating for these schools of hope, advocating for co-location. Now, folks aren't as caught up. This is like essentially advocating for these special types of charter schools that can, maybe the most controversial part of it is that they can do this thing called co-locate, which is like bring a high school into a middle school maybe, or into an elementary school and kind of take it over and get priority and don't have to, and the Orange County Public Schools have to pay for it. So it has actually been, we've talked a lot about it on the podcast. Go back, please listen to that episode. We've talked a lot about it, and it has really blown up since really Liz Barker did that opinion piece and we did the podcast. But it is very unpopular. So we thought it would be a good idea to see what some of the public reaction, and there's just a number of Facebook comments just kind of ripping this opinion piece apart. Here's one. This has to be an opinion piece. This law is basically a wealth transfer from private to public institutions and ownership. The public should be outraged. I've worked for both charters and public schools. The difference, public schools serve everyone as mandated by laws. Charters are typically for-profit organizations that get to cherry pick kids. Let me read one more because some of these were actually funny. I probably should have had the funny ones queued up. If a first-class airline seat goes unused, trust me, they simply won't allow someone to sit there just because it's empty.
I sort of liked the one that talked about, what about the state capitol? I hear that's empty for half of the year. Can schools co-locate there? And then there was also a great question, which I had also raised at our meeting, which was, can these schools of hope co-locate in charter schools, which are public schools? But apparently the answer that we've heard is no.
So I just bring that up just to say that this is a very unpopular policy. Folks are not happy about it. There's a a bill in the state Senate to reverse some of, I think, the worst of these schools of hope policies. But we're going to keep talking about it. We're going to keep following it. Obviously, very involved. You had a number of schools of hope come to you, to OCPS. So I'll let you, I think we're going to cover that more in a future podcast. But I just had to point that out because I love that post.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Senator Roussan, for filing the bill that attempts to kind of back out some of this, some of the most worrisome and destructive parts of this Schools of Hope bill. So we'll see where it goes.
Okay, one other thing I want to talk about. I know we don't talk as much about national politics, but I love talking about national politics, maybe because I just love being depressed. But I have a question for you, and I've kind of seen some chatter about this, and I think it kind of makes sense. But here's my question. Is Trump cooked? Not in the sense that like Trump is just like completely done, not going to cause any more damage. I mean, he's got another 3 years. But I think we have passed the point of Trump's most influential, most popular part of his presidency. Knock on wood, nothing crazy happens. But let me lay this out to you. So we have the midterms losses in which Dems crushed. Republicans defy Trump on the filibuster. They defy him on the Epstein vote. There's the Marjorie Taylor Greene fallout. His approval rating is currently at 36%. The House Armed Services Committee just this weekend announced that they want to investigate Pete Hegseth for his kill everyone comment and whether that is a war crime vis-a-vis these boat bombings in the Caribbean. And then actually, I just caught a clip of Jamie Dimon from JP Morgan Chase essentially saying that they don't want to fund Trump's ballroom because they don't want to look inappropriate and they're not going to be sure what the next DOJ is going to do, which to me says they're finally worried about the optics and what might happen. Whereas I think very much at the beginning of this administration, it seemed like we had open season on Trump's corruption and buying favors. And I think that door might be finally closing. So I don't think we're through the worst of it. There's much harm that is, I think, still going to happen, but I think his influence is just not going to get any stronger. What do you think?
I do not agree.
Tell me.
No, I mean, I don't know if maybe his influence doesn't get stronger, but people forget. I mean, people have such short memories. I feel like he'll get through this. It'll be fine. People will want, because what I'm remembering in my mind is reading that my alma mater, Northwestern, just agreed to pay $75 million. I mean, they were fighting. They were fighting for what they believed in, and now they're just paying $75 million to be done with it so that they can get money for their research and grants. I'm not saying that's not important. It is, but are we to the end of people, bowing down to him and paying and doing what he wants? No, I absolutely think not.
Well, I'm not saying that we're necessarily at the end of it, but I'm just saying that the point in which he was his most like powerful and unquestionable is done. Like there's still going to be institutions and the majority of the Republican Party is going to capitulate. But I think folks are going to be looking towards what is the next iteration of MAGA and the Republican Party, and Trump's not going to be a part of it. And so, and he is really unpopular right now. Now, anything can change. We live in a world in which like a million things happen in the span of 24 hours. I'm just saying he is like, we're not going to see unless something crazy happens, which again is possible. We're not going to see a more powerful, Trump more capable of bullying than we were, 6 months ago.
I don't know that I agree with that, but I mean, I hope so. I do agree that we're going to start to see a spinoff of some other, part of the Republican Party. So I am curious to see. I think that was inevitable. I think that was going to happen. And I think we're starting to really see some of those big breaks right now. So I am curious to see how that evolves. And I agree with you that that's going to happen. But do I think he's done bullying? No. Do I think that I don't know. I don't. I think there's maybe a low point right now, but
you think it's gonna come back out? Yep. Okay. Well, we're allowed to disagree on this podcast. Controversy is interesting. People like it.
I don't know if you think I'm wrong. Let me know. Send me an email and Eddie will read it. And then speaking of that though, I don't know, reading emails and staying up on things. 2 weeks, no caffeine.
Oh,
How are you doing?
that's right. Yeah, no, I do these like temporary caffeine hiatuses because I will find myself drinking too much coffee, and then I will be like, no, I got to quit cold turkey because I'm a wild person. I think I'm doing all right. I think I might be past the worst of the headaches. It has been rough. Caffeine is a great drug. Highly recommend it until it becomes too much. So I feel like the same way I think Trump is no longer is like past the point of his most powerful grip on the country and the party. I think caffeine withdrawal has passed the most powerful point of its grip on my body, and I am like slowly but surely starting to feel better, starting to feel more alert. I don't know. What do you think? Am I like starting to seem normal again? Have I ever seemed normal? What do you think?
First of all, that was an excellent analogy to bring that back and to connect everything as we jumped from Trump to caffeine. But no, I actually think I'm pretty impressed. I mean, it almost makes me want to stop drinking coffee. I will not, because I so look forward to my cold brew every morning. But
it is delicious.
No, but I think I think you've turned the corner. You're caffeine free. Congratulations, Eddie.
Thank you. I'm excited for this conversation again a year from now when I inevitably start drinking coffee again, and then I'm like, I'm drinking too much, I need to stop, it's messing with my sleep, yada yada. But no, it feels good for now to be off the juice, and I can't wait for that next cup of coffee, which is going to feel so incredible.
All right, should we go to the interview?
We should go to the interview. I should not have taken so long for people to get to this conversation with my dad. It's a lovely conversation and really insightful. So enjoy a conversation with my dad, Richard Geller. Welcome to the podcast. A very special guest for me, my dad, Richard Geller. Dad, how does it feel being on a podcast?
I'm excited.
Well, we're really excited to have you. I feel like this is going to be posted after Thanksgiving, but this is like a holiday edition maybe of the podcast for, family and all that good stuff. But the reason why I've thought about having you on the podcast and wanted to have you on for a bit is because we were, relatively recently talking about McCarthyism and how it relates to what's going on in Florida and what's going on today. And I feel like you, as someone who's been around the block and actually has a background in education as well, which we'll get to, would be interesting to talk about, or interesting to talk to. Excuse me.
It'll be my pleasure.
All right, I love it. Well, let's start out. I mentioned this a little bit, but can you talk about your background as a teacher? What did you teach? What was that like, and kind of when was that?
Well, first I went to Long Island University in Brooklyn campus. When I graduated, I went directly to teaching at Brooklyn Technical High School history. I majored in history and minored in education. So I did have a background and experience learning how to teach. One of the courses that I took was teaching methods, and then I spent 6 months as a teaching student teacher at the same high school in Brooklyn. And I was really pleased that they decided to hire me as a full-time teacher. And while I was teaching, I was also working on my master's degree. But I have very fond memories of teaching at Brooklyn Tech.
Why did you choose history?
Because I think that history gives a person a good background how the country was formed and the world around us, and how it relates, countries relate to each other. And every country has a different background. Every country has a different history. And I think it's really important that people know this, and I wanted to know how Europe differed from Asia, and Asia differed from the U.S., and how Latin America differed from all the other countries. And I was really pleased that I did.
Well, and it's so important to learn from history so that we don't make the same mistakes and we are, better in the future.
That is correct. And one of the things that just recently, by watching on PBS the story of Benjamin Franklin and leading up to the American Revolution is learning about the history of our founding fathers and how some of them may have been flawed in some ways, but they were all intelligent people and understood the need for a real democracy.
I love it. Well, one of the other things that we were talking about earlier was, your experience as a teacher in the classroom and how maybe that, you're reading it, because I know you still keep up on education news here in Florida, how maybe that's different than the experiences that teachers currently are having in the classroom.
Well, when I was teaching my first semester, the head of the Department of History gave me a syllabus that they were using for the different courses, and as a guideline, not as a dictatorial saying this is what you have to use. It was a guideline, and it was a great help for me to understand what the students in the different grade levels need to learn. I had students in 9th, 10th, and 11th grade my first semester, and they came from all different backgrounds. And where I taught at Brooklyn Tech High School, it was at one of the schools in New York City where the kids had to take a test to get into. And it was a STEM school, but they still had to take the required English and history classes. What I learned the very first day of teaching is that the students want to learn. They want to know about history. They want to actually learn how history involves government, because it's, you assume people know, and then you go there and they don't always know, especially the 9th graders. They're just coming in, and I enjoyed getting them more than anything else to interact with each other. We were never, especially in my before I graduated college and I took teaching methods, we were never told to tell them what our own personal views were. We tried to get them to learn from what the issues were, what their views were, and how other students thought about what the other students' views were. And I found that very enlightening. And the most important part of that first semester is how the students wanted to learn more and then ask questions. And I was very pleased that they looked upon me as to give them the answers.
Well, I think one of the really sad differences today is I'm imagining, I don't know, I'm not a teacher, obviously, Steph, you talk a lot to a lot of teachers, but that even today teachers are not trying to push their own ideology, but the state of Florida is trying to push for teachers to push a dictated ideology to students. That even if a teacher is not giving their own politics, their own spin, the spin is coming from the state curriculum. And I'm curious what you think of that.
I really think it's kind of sad to have teachers dictated to what they have to teach their students, because
in terms of ideology, absolutely. And when you have a course that's mandated, such as the evils of communism, it's fine to talk about comparative political systems, because that way people learn, whether it's a communist country, capitalist country, a socialist country, they're all different. And then they can learn, and then they can decide. But to be taught and to have the teachers teach the students one particular set of beliefs, I feel is very detrimental to them learning, because you're not teaching them how to think, you're telling them what to think. And to teach them, such as the evils of communism, it's in a way passé. There's only 3 or 4 communist countries in the world. There are many democratic socialist countries in the world, but there's a big difference. But by teaching the evils of communism, something that is not that relevant, in my opinion, anymore, they can be taught a lot of things that could be helpful to having them learn how to think. And when you learn about comparative
political systems, that's a great way for them to think, well, this is good, this isn't so good. But to tell them what to think is very dangerous. And then, unfortunately, there's a lot of hypocrisy because what has happened is teachers have been accused, wrongly so, of trying to push their beliefs. And it's now being pushed by the state of Florida.
Well, it's always hypocrisy and always projection. They accuse, the right accuses schools of being these engines of indoctrination. But of course they're the ones who are, dictating these.
They're doing the indoctrination.
Exactly.
I also just wonder from an efficacy standpoint, and just having teenagers myself, when you tell them certain things and you tell them this is the way it is and this is the way to think, it's not always the most effective way to actually teach them. And that really, just by letting them explore and learn about all of the different, as you said, different political systems, that I think is, a better way to actually help them understand what they mean and what they're about, rather than just telling them this is so.
Yes, and one thing I do remember from years ago when I was teaching is that one of my students asked me about, and this seems a long time ago, but it's happened, about healthcare in this country. And it was a young lady, and she says, why do other countries have healthcare for all of their citizens, and we do not? And even then, they were aware of the inequities and then what happens is the people that defend not having health care for everyone, in fact, it went into a great discussion in the classroom, and that's what I really liked, because the students talked about it, because there were actually many students who were Asian students that lived in the Lower East Side of New York but wanted to come to Brooklyn Tech, and who were immigrants themselves, or their parents were immigrants, and they had talked about how they had health care there and how parents were struggling because they did not. And so many people felt that this is something we could do. And it wasn't the fact that we don't have it, they just wanted to know why we don't have it. And students gave different answers, and I was just so impressed how even, 40 years ago when I started teaching, how students were even aware then of the inequities of the system, and how people who, I think something came up, I remember it very clearly, this was before abortion was legal all across the country in 1973.
And then illegal. Then Roe v. Wade was overturned.
Thank you. But in New York State, it had just become illegal. And they say, well, it's fine for well-to-do people. They could just, fly from one state to another where it is legal. Just a few states it was legal then. And I was just so impressed how they were aware of the inequities of the system. And so I said, well, why do you think that we don't have it? And they all said, pretty much the same thing, because they came up with the idea that it was greed, that people give the excuse, well, we can't have health care because then our taxes would go up. And someone yelled out, well, maybe if the millionaires, then it was only millionaires, not billionaires. Yeah. Maybe if the millionaires paid their fair share, then we would have health care for all. So,
and that kid grew up to be Bernie Sanders.
It must have been. I knew he was, he could have been from Brooklyn. But there was a lot of, people that
to be clear for our audience, you're not 20 years older than Bernie Sanders, I think.
No, I am not. Bernie is a little bit older than me. But the most important thing about teaching then and today, what I read is, and what is the sad part, is having people dictate what books you can have in the classroom. I had certain textbooks that I could use for the course, and it was never. And then I was told, if you see a good fiction or nonfiction that would help in the classroom, use it. I was never told, let us review it first. I was always told, whatever you think is a good book that'll help you teach the course, you do that. And there was never an issue of books being taken out of the library, being told what books you could read. And that's a sad part that I see a difference today, is that books being removed from the shelves and books being removed from the classroom because someone was offended or something was in the book. But the way I feel is that if the books are written, the student can decide, what's right and what's wrong, because that's their idea, to be thinking about what is said in the books.
And it also sounds like, from hearing these descriptions, that teachers were treated more like professionals.
They certainly were. And my sister's a teacher. In fact, she taught many more years than I did as an English teacher, retired in New York City. And she was told the same thing, that they were respected. They said, Bonnie, you teach whatever you want, whatever books, because as an English course, they would read books and then they would discuss what was in the books. And there was nothing, no one reviewed it. And it's disturbing today to see book banning. There was never something that I had to deal with at all. It was never an issue. Mm-hmm. And it is something that's come about recently that's been very disturbing, because our founding fathers would not have been very happy with this. Just the other day, I was reading about Thomas Jefferson and James Madison, and they lived near each other. Years ago, I visited both homes, and they said that religion is something that should not be part of the school system. It should be put, the separation of church and state. But unfortunately, today people think there's many people that think there should be prayer in school, one prayer. And I'm sorry that it's going backward, not forward, because we have a lot of students that are so eager to learn about things and not being told what to do and how to do it. And it's hypocritical for the state to tell the students what they can read, what they can think, and what should be taught to them.
Perfect.
I'm wondering, I agree with that. I'm wondering if you see any parallels between what is happening with sort of the current administration and time periods or administrations in the past.
Well, the current administration, there's two administrations. We could talk about Florida and
I am actually curious about both.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. There's people in both administrations that are disturbing in many ways, because one of the things...
Both the DeSantis and Trump administration.
Correct. And just take DeSantis for first. When you talk about an appointment that was made of the state Surgeon General, who was saying that vaccines aren't needed and just being anti-vax and such, and telling people that they don't necessarily need to get a vaccine for their children. This is very counterproductive to children's health. And this never would have happened when I was growing up. When I was growing up, people were so thrilled to have vaccines for polio, for other illnesses that children had, because polio was a major issue at the time. And now being told that vaccines are not something that should be a priority is very disturbing. And it also comes in the federal government, being told by the head of Health and Human Services that vaccines are something that is not a priority. It's very unfortunate. And, you know, when you become anti-science and anti-education, it's very disturbing, because who's going to who is going to be hurt by that is the children who don't have the opportunity to get the vaccines, to being taught what is the correct way of how their health needs should be taken care of. So what I find, just as a former teacher, is that we're going backwards instead of forward. And being anti-science is one of the most detrimental things to children's health and their life. And also another thing is having, in Florida, what I've read, there's a group, Moms for Liberty, who is trying to dictate what books can be put in the school. And this never would have happened when I was teaching. There was, parents came in, and in fact, I remember I had a parent who came in and brought a book that maybe they'd be interested in. Didn't say this is something you should read. She brought in a book, and it was so long ago I forgot what the book was. But this was a suggestion, not a demand, because the teachers were so respected then, and that's the difference. Today, teachers, I guess in one way I could say, are getting a bad rap.
Oh yeah, for sure, quite unfairly. Going back to the sort of, past administrations and current administrations, and I alluded to this at the top of the podcast, but thinking about this sort of modern day McCarthyism, especially here in Florida, do you have much memory? Because I feel like McCarthyism of that sort of era was like maybe you were a little young, but do you have some memory of that?
Yeah, well, first of all, Senator Joseph McCarthy of Wisconsin, he actually did all the damage in the early 50s. He died in 1957. And I do have somewhat of a memory about it because my parents talked about, my father especially, that the memory was that there was a big anti-communist scare after World War II. There was one after World War I also, but getting back to McCarthyism, what Joseph McCarthy tried to do, unjustly so, is try to, what he called, root out communists from the federal government, the State Department, other areas.
Kind of like Trump trying to get rid of the deep state or,
exactly.
or wrong thing.
It's like, come again. It's like starting over again, because if someone disagrees with the present administration, they want to go after them.
Yeah.
And just like Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona, the Trump administration wants to investigate him and possibly bring him up on charges and activate him again. This never would have happened when I was growing up in the 70s and the 60s. People, were taught that free speech is a good thing. Right now, we're taught that free speech, if you don't agree with the administration, with the Trump administration, they will go after you.
Or if you say something controversial about Charlie Kirk, or something not even controversial about Charlie Kirk.
You could just say something like Jimmy Kimmel did just afterwards, and it wasn't even anything negative about him. It's just many times you think, just a joke. And then they purport to be for free speech, but then they kick him off the air for a couple of weeks. And it's really sad because what happens is people then become worried about speaking because they think their jobs are on the line. And it's true, their jobs could be on the line because universities and law firms, they acquiesce to the Trump administration. So free speech is not alive and well, unfortunately. When I was at LIU, there was a demonstration for the war in Vietnam, and no one was kicked off camp. No one was given a hard time. It was just, this is the way things were then. This was in 1970. Richard Nixon was president. He may not have been happy about it, but it's nothing like today where troops were sent in to quell the demonstrators like they did in Los Angeles, and now they're in Chicago, and they're going to New Orleans next. And it's really unfortunate because you really grow up with the feeling, what I learned in history, that how unique it was in this country, that you were allowed to speak your mind. Even in Illinois, many years ago, the Nazi Party was allowed to march in Illinois because there's freedom of speech. And even though you don't have to agree with them, of course, they were allowed to do it. But today, you worry about that. Just like Charlie Kirk, when he was killed, and anyone mentioned anything negative about him, they're losing their jobs. This should never happen.
Well, now the Nazis are being brought into the Trump administration, and the people on the street are the ones getting rounded up. So we really have like a very bizarre, disturbing reversal of fortunes.
Yes, and one of the most disturbing things is that telling people that as far as anti-Semitism is concerned, that the left is responsible. But the ones that are really serious about it are the ones on the right, and it's just, and they come into the Trump administration and work for him, and he just hired another man who says that he admired Hitler. So it's very unfortunate. We're going to an area now that I never thought we would.
So one of the questions Steph and I have is, do you feel like, this is the most frightening presidential administration of your lifetime?
Absolutely. This is the most frightening administration since in my lifetime. I mean, we had the wonderful years when JFK was elected, and then other presidents may not have been great. We disagreed with Bush in the war in Iraq, but there's nothing like this. Just nothing like this. And the people that Trump has hired, all the people that he has hired in his cabinet, they're scary type people. They don't care, they don't care if your rights are trampled. When Trump was interviewed on CBS and the question was given to him, are you concerned about how some of these arrests are made by ICE? He said, no, it should be more. The way they're treated, mistreated. And this is the world that we're living in this country, and it's something that I think everybody should be concerned about. And one of the most disturbing things is how he's allowed to get away with it, and no one in his party practically says anything.
Yeah, I mean, I think we are, like, some of the cracks maybe finally starting to show, but just barely, and far too late for so many families.
And one thing I'll say, even when Nixon, when Richard Nixon was president and he was involved in the Watergate scandal, at least Republicans finally walked up to his office and said, you better resign, or because you won't survive impeachment. The point is that other people in his party saw how wrong what was going on. Practically nobody in Trump's party, says, you got to stop. Mm-hmm. And just like years ago, not that many years ago, when people were supposedly smuggling drugs into the country, they were arrested and put on trial, not just murdered on the high seas, and without any trial, without any extradition. That's what the Coast Guard is for. They're there to board the ships and arrest the people if they find something. When you just murder people without any trial, I never thought I would see that. Mm-hmm. And no one says anything, which is even worse.
Yeah. I think that part about feeling as though there are no checks and balances is really concerning, because it does mean that one person can get away with really anything. And I think that disagreement and protest and certainly asking questions has always been considered very American. And now I'm not sure that everybody agrees with that.
Oh, I think that's absolutely true. And, when people agree with Trump and he's allowed to do whatever he wants, and people say it's okay as long as he gets rid of the immigrants. And it's very disturbing. And then making, whether it's Trump or his vice president, saying that Haitians are eating dogs and cats in Springfield, Illinois. I think that it's very disturbing that people just didn't say anything. It just let them get away with it.
Well, if we've learned anything from history, and I know that you have learned a lot from history, you've seen a lot of different things, what, in your opinion, what should we be doing now? What should Americans be doing now to protect our country and protect our democracy and protect our rights and protect our people?
Well, I think the most important thing, people could do in droves is, since they do make the laws, is to contact their congresspeople. Because if you...
Or school board member.
Or school board member, of course. Because if you don't, nothing's going to change, because there's change comes from numbers. Just like during the Vietnam War protests, there were, people were out in droves, and it really made a difference. That's why LBJ stepped down, decided not to run again, because people listen to people, because they know if they don't, they won't get reelected. But I think the most important thing they can do is to, contact their representatives and let them know how they feel. Because if they don't, they'll just keep on going the way it is. But if I can go back to when I started teaching till now, I'm so glad I did teach. And I had such a good feeling when I saw the students asking questions. I wish I had a video now of what I did, way back then, and seeing the looks on the students' faces when they questioned each other. Not question me, question each other, because they spoke up. And when I would say, Jerry, what do you think about what Bill just said? And they were so happy to participate. And there was no fear of whatever they said, because there shouldn't be. And unfortunately today, you do have that fear. And what happened in Florida with all the state universities and changing the way they're operating and who's running them is very disturbing, because professors at many different of the Florida university systems are afraid, of their jobs. And they also have wonderful, students there, and they're the ones that are going to suffer, because they're narrowing what can be taught and how it can be taught.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. All right. Any final words from you, Dad?
I'm just glad that I'm here with these two wonderful people, and I'm just glad that I was able to just share a little bit about my wonderful teaching experience. And I'm just hoping that someday, hopefully soon, this educational and healthcare nightmare that starts from the top goes away, and we get intelligent people running the country.
Well, Steph tells me all the time she's thinking about running for governor at some point.
I think that would be wonderful. We need bright people and science-minded people.
Final question. Which is your favorite child now that we're recording it on mic?
Eddie's my favorite youngest child.
Good answer.
All right. Thank you so much, Dad.
Thank you.
Okay. It's my pleasure. Bye-bye.
Bye.